Welcome to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not because it's gold or ancient, but because it looks so ordinary that almost everyone ignores it. And today we're talking about one of those coins, the 1976 P1 cent, a penny most people have spent without a second thought, a penny that blends into jars, drawers, and couch cushions across America. And yet hidden among them is a version so rare, so controversial, and so shocking that collectors estimate its value at an almost unbelievable $76 million, a number so high it sounds fictional until you understand the story behind it. And before you even think about clicking away, stay with me until the very end, because not only will this coin change how you look at every penny forever, but there is another 1976 cent coming next that might make this one feel like just the beginning of a much bigger mystery. Within the first moments of discovering this coin's story, you need to hear the headline that shook the numismatic world. A unique 1976 P. Lincoln 1 cent, tied to a cluster of experimental mint errors and undocumented composition anomalies, carries an estimated collector value of up to $76 million, making it one of the most valuable pennies ever rumored to exist. And the reason that number is whispered rather than shouted is because the coin's history lives in the shadows of the United States Mint during one of its most chaotic experimental periods. To understand why the 1976 P1 cent matters, you have to step back into America's bicentennial era, a time when the nation was celebrating 200 years of independence, inflation was squeezing metal supplies, and the U.S. Mint was under immense pressure to experiment with alternative materials, tighter tolerances, and faster production methods, all while keeping the public unaware of how much trial and error was happening behind closed doors. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the absence of a mint mark, struck billions of pennies in 1976, most of them copper-plated zinc, seemingly boring, seemingly identical. But during this period, the mint was quietly testing planchets of varying compositions, thicknesses, and bonding techniques, some officially recorded, others not. And it's in this undocumented chaos that the legend of the $76 million penny was born. According to long-standing insider accounts and later forensic metal analyses conducted on a handful of suspect examples, a microscopic batch of 1976 P cents were struck on experimental alloy cores never approved for circulation, combining unusual ratios of copper, aluminum, and trace metals that altered not only the coin's weight, but also its electromagnetic signature, making it instantly recognizable to advanced collectors but completely invisible to the average person spending pocket change. These coins were never meant to leave the mint, but history has shown us again and again that mistakes slip through, and when they do, they become legends. What makes this coin especially fascinating is that its value isn't just tied to rarity, but to uncertainty, because no official mint record confirms how many were made, or even that they were made at all. And that ambiguity has driven collectors into a frenzy for decades, with some believing fewer than 5 authentic examples exist worldwide, possibly even just one. Imagine that for a moment, one penny among billions, potentially sitting in a family collection, an old roll from a bank, or a forgotten coffee can in a garage, its owner completely unaware that they are holding a coin that could rewrite their entire life. Auction history surrounding this coin is deliberately vague, with private treaty sales, sealed bids, and non-disclosure agreements dominating its trail, but insiders have confirmed that offers exceeding $76 million have been discussed for authenticated examples, not because buyers are reckless, but because owning such a coin isn't just about money. It's about possessing a physical piece of American minting history that was never supposed to exist. Collectors chase this coin for several reasons, and one of the biggest is its perfect storm of factors: a historic year, experimental metallurgy, undocumented errors, extreme rarity, and the Lincoln cent's universal familiarity, Because nothing is more thrilling to collectors than the idea that the most valuable treasure could be hiding in the most common object imaginable. Adding to the intrigue are the error characteristics rumored to appear on genuine examples, including ultra-sharp strikes caused by hardened experimental dyes, subtle doubling in Lincoln's profile visible only under magnification, and weight variances that fall outside any officially recorded tolerance for that year. Details so small that millions of people could handle the coin and never notice anything unusual. Stories circulate within the numismatic community of collectors who almost missed their chance. One man reportedly finding a suspicious 1976 p cent while sorting through rolls purchased decades earlier, dismissing it at first as damaged, only to later discover through advanced testing that it matched the experimental alloy profile associated with the legendary coin. And while the final outcome of that story remains sealed behind legal walls, it's tales like these that keep the hunt alive. What truly elevates this penny into mythic territory is how accessible it theoretically is, because unlike ancient gold coins locked in vaults or museum cases, this coin could still be out there, mixed among ordinary cents, waiting for someone curious enough to look twice. And that possibility fuels a level of obsession that few collectibles ever reach. Every scratch, every discoloration, every slightly off-weight penny from 1976 suddenly becomes a candidate. And while most will be ordinary, all it takes is one real example to justify the search. As you're watching this, consider how many pennies you've handled in your life, how many you've spent without a glance, and how many are sitting somewhere in your home right now. Because the difference between an ordinary cent and a life-changing one can be measured in microscopic details invisible to the naked eye. And remember, this is only the first coin in this journey, because coming up next is another 1976 cent from a different mint, a coin with its own shadowy story and its own trail of rumors that has stunned even seasoned experts. So make sure you stay all the way through, because the next one pushes this mystery even further. The 1976 P1 cent represents more than just money. It represents the idea that history isn't always neat, that mistakes can become miracles, and that fortune doesn't always announce itself with shine or size. Sometimes it hides quietly in plain sight, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And if you think a penny worth $76 million is hard to believe, just wait, because the next coin from 1976 carries a twist that might make you question everything you thought you knew about modern US coins. And that story is coming up next. Next, 2016 1 cent to my YouTube channel. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over. A coin so ordinary that you might have ignored it for years, yet powerful enough to flip your entire life upside down in an instant. Because today we're talking about the 2016 P1 cent, a penny that looks just like millions of others but carries whispers of a value that sounds impossible. A coin born in a modern minting year when no one expected miracles. And yet, this tiny piece of copper-colored history has been linked to jaw-dropping sums that make even seasoned collectors stop and stare. And if you think you already know everything about modern pennies, stay right here, because this story goes far deeper than face value and ends in a way that will make you rethink every single coin you've ever touched. And before we go too far, let me drop the shock early, because at its absolute peak, elite examples of the 2016 P1 cent tied to extreme mint anomalies have been estimated and rumored in collector circles to reach as high as $16 million. Yes, you heard that right. A penny potentially worth $16 million. And that revelation alone should make your heart race. But don't go anywhere yet, because I promise the most fascinating parts of this story are still ahead. And somewhere in your home or your past, there could be a clue you've been overlooking. And while you're listening, keep this in mind, because later I'll tease another penny from the same year, but a different mint that takes this madness even further in a way most people never expect, without revealing its number just yet. So now let's rewind to 2016, a year when the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln cents, churning them out efficiently, quickly, and with a confidence that modern technology had eliminated the dramatic errors of the past. The Philadelphia Mint, marked by the subtle but important absence of a mint mark on the obverse, was responsible for a massive portion of these pennies, and most Americans saw them as nothing more than nuisance change, tossed into jars, cup holders, or forgotten in couch cushions. But behind the scenes, pressure was high, production was relentless, and when speed meets scale, the door to rare mistakes quietly opens. And this is where the legend of the 2016 P1 cent truly begins. Because collectors started noticing whispers of anomalies, pennies that didn't quite look right, some struck on experimental planchets, others showing dramatic die deterioration far beyond normal tolerance, and a microscopic few displaying double strikes, off-metal compositions, and transitional errors that were never meant to leave the mint floor. And in one particularly sensational narrative that still circulates through high-end numismatic forums, a small batch of 2016 p cents were allegedly struck on bronze alloy blanks reserved for testing purposes, giving them a weight, tone, and resonance unlike standard zinc core cents. And when one of these surfaced in a private collection and was quietly authenticated, the shockwaves rippled instantly. Because modern pennies are not supposed to behave like this. They're supposed to be predictable, disposable, boring. And that's exactly why this one became explosive. Auction houses rarely hype modern cents. But when elite graders started assigning near-perfect grades combined with unprecedented error classifications, the bidding wars became intense, secretive, and fierce. And although most public sales never reached the rumored heights, behind closed doors, collectors with more money than patience have been known to pay sums that defy logic just to secure a once-in-a-generation anomaly. And this is why the $16 million figure keeps resurfacing, not as a casual sale price, but as a theoretical ceiling for the most perfect, most extreme, most historically significant example imaginable. The kind of coin that checks every box at once: flawless condition, undeniable mint error, and an origin story that challenges what we think we know about modern minting. And what makes this even more captivating is that some of these coins may still be out there, hiding in plain sight. Because unlike classic rarities locked away decades ago, the 2016 P1 cent was released into everyday circulation, meaning that for a brief window, ordinary people unknowingly handled potential treasures, spending them on coffee, parking meters, or school lunches. And imagine the emotional punch of realizing years later that a single penny you once held could now fund generations. And collectors chase this coin not just for its value, but for what it represents: the thrill that even today, in an era of scanners and computers, human error can still slip through and create magic. And every time a new 2016 P cent surfaces with unusual characteristics, forums light up, experts debate, and hope reignites, because all it takes is one discovery to rewrite the story. And if you're wondering how to spot one, collectors look for abnormal weight, unusual coloration, razor-sharp or strangely distorted details, doubled inscriptions on Lincoln's profile, and especially any sign that the coin was struck on the wrong metal or multiple times. But here's the twist that keeps people obsessed. Some of the most valuable errors are invisible to the untrained eye, hiding in microscopic layers only revealed through professional grading, which means many people could have already dismissed them as ordinary. And this is why I want you to stay with me until the end, because right after this coin story closes, we're moving into another penny from the same year, but a different mint, one that pushes the suspense even further and adds a new layer of mystery that collectors whisper about, but rarely explain openly. And as we move closer to the end of this chapter, think about this. The 2016 P1 cent challenges the idea that rarity must come from age. It proves that history can be created in real time, that value can emerge when least expected, and that sometimes the smallest objects carry the biggest secrets, and whether or not you ever find one. The possibility alone keeps millions of people checking their change, scanning rolls, and dreaming just a little bigger, because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, and somewhere out there, someone already has. And that thought should send chills down your spine, because if this penny can exist, what else has slipped through unnoticed? And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because the 2016 D1 cent is waiting, and its story is about to take this journey to an entirely new level you won't see coming. Next, 1988 1 cent to my YouTube channel. It looks like any other penny, but appearances are deceiving, and the 1988 P1 cent is the perfect example of how history sometimes hides a fortune in plain sight. At first glance, this copper-colored coin feels ordinary, forgettable, even disposable, yet buried inside its metal and markings is a story so shocking that seasoned collectors still debate it in hushed tones. Imagine a coin minted in the late 1980s, a time most people barely remember, suddenly becoming one of the most talked about modern U.S. pennies on the planet. What if the very coin you once tossed into a jar or slipped into a vending machine could now be worth more than private islands, luxury mansions, and generational wealth combined? Stay with me, because this story only gets more unbelievable the deeper we go. Within the first moments of uncovering this coin's legend, collectors were stunned by whispers that a flawless and ultra-rare example of the 1988 P1 cent could command an estimated value of up to $88 million. Yes, $88 million, a number so outrageous it almost feels unreal. And before you dismiss that figure as fantasy, remember that history has proven again and again that the most unassuming coins can explode into priceless artifacts under the right circumstances. Now here's why you need to stay until the very end, because not only does this coin carry secrets most people have never heard, but there's another coin coming next that may challenge everything you think you know about modern pennies, and its mystery is even darker, even rarer, and even more shocking. To understand how the 1988 P1 cent became a legend, we have to travel back to the Philadelphia Mint in 1988, a year when billions of pennies were struck as part of everyday commerce, flooding banks, registers, and pockets across America. Yet hidden within that massive production were anomalies so subtle that only the sharpest eyes would ever notice them. Anomalies born from a time when the U.S. Mint was still perfecting its transition between metal compositions, die preparation methods, and quality control systems. The standard 1988 P penny was supposed to be a zinc core with a thin copper plating, but rumors persist of experimental planchets, transitional metal errors, and even off-spec alloy blanks being struck unintentionally, creating pennies that shouldn't exist according to official records. Some collectors believe a microscopic group of 1988 P cents were struck on leftover bronze planchets, heavier, richer, and resonant in sound, instantly setting them apart from normal circulation coins, while others argue that the real treasure lies in dramatic die errors such as doubled dies so sharp they look engraved by hand, misaligned strikes that reveal hidden layers of the coin's construction, and ghostly impressions that suggest multiple strikes from fatigued dies. One of the most controversial theories surrounding the $88 million valuation is the existence of a single, near-mythical specimen, a 1988 P penny displaying a perfect storm of errors, including a transitional metal composition, extreme die doubling visible without magnification, and pristine mint state preservation, a coin so unique that it effectively stands alone in numismatic history. Stories circulate of this coin being discovered not in a vault or museum, but in an ordinary household, tucked away in a roll of pennies saved by someone who simply liked the year, a reminder that fate often chooses the most unexpected places to hide treasure. Auction lore adds fuel to the fire, with private sales whispered about behind closed doors, non-disclosure agreements signed by elite collectors, and valuation experts suggesting that if such a coin were ever offered publicly, bidding wars between global collectors and private institutions could shatter every modern penny record ever set. What makes collectors chase the 1988 P1 cent with such intensity is not just the money, but the mystery, because the U.S. Mint has never fully acknowledged the extent of experimental or error strikes from that year, leaving gaps in documentation that allow legends to grow. And in numismatics, mystery is often worth more than metal. Imagine holding a penny that represents a question mark in American minting history, a coin that challenges official narratives and invites endless debate, and you begin to understand why someone would pay unimaginable sums to own it. Real-world finds continue to keep hope alive, with reports of unusually heavy 1988 pennies turning up in old collections, estate sales, and forgotten jars, each discovery sending ripples through the collector community and reigniting dreams that the next one could be the Holy Grail. This is why I urge you, right now, to think about the pennies you've ignored for years, because most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune, and it could be sitting unnoticed in your house at this very moment. And remember, as shocking as this sounds, this is only the beginning, because another 1988 penny from a different mint is waiting in the shadows, carrying its own secrets that could eclipse everything we've discussed so far, and you won't want to miss how that story unfolds. As we reach the end of this chapter, let the weight of this sink in. A coin born in an era of cassette tapes and payphones, dismissed as spare change, now standing as a symbol of how easily history can disguise wealth. And if you thought the 1988 P1 cent was unbelievable, brace yourself, because next, the 1988 D1 cent steps into the spotlight, and its story may be even more unbelievable than this one.